British.
Good point.
Okay. Here we are. We're in Ice Hay, so we're on page 212. And Ice Hay is the Mamar Beyom Ashtei Asar. We're doing the lessons in Sefer Maimorim. And this is Rabbi Maimon from 1971. I think that today's Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So just when some of you asked me about Basilagani, they just want to just give over to understand a little bit what all the Basilaganis are about. What's basically happening now around the world in the yeshivas with Basilagani. So I want to explain there's a few Basilaganis. First of all, there's the Basilagani that the previous Rebbe wrote. And this is something which he prepared before he was nostalgic. He put in writing. In those days, because of his health, he didn't say the Maimar. He wrote them in advance before special days. So he had prepared 4 Maimarim. One for Yud Shvat. What was Yud Shvat? It was his grandmother's yahrzeit, Rebbe Rivka, the wife of the Rebbe Marash. Second one, the second Maimar was prepared for Yud Gimel Shvat. That was the yahrzeit of his own mother, Rebbe Stern Sarah. She was the wife of the Rebbe Rashab. The third Maimar was for Purim, and the fourth Maimar was for Pesach. Each Maimar had in it 5 chapters. So altogether, it's one long continuation of 20 chapters, but it was 4 separate Maimarim. So as we know, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out the Maimar for his grandmother's yahrzeit, but that Shabbos, when he gave out the Maimar, that was the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe himself was nostalgic. And the Rebbe explained that even though officially it was given out for his grandmother's yahrzeit, but certainly the Frierdiker Rebbe knew what was coming. And he gave out the Maimar, it was for Chassidim, and this was sort of the last Maimar that the Frierdiker Rebbe left us. As a result of that, every year on Yud Shvat, the Rebbe would say a Maimar, started with the same words, Basilagani, and he would explain one chapter of the Frierdiker Rebbe's 20 chapters. So there's a whole sefer, as thick as this, called Basilagani, and that covers all the Basilaganis from 1951 until 1930. Every year, another chapter explaining the original Basilagani. When that finished, everybody was wondering what's going to be now. And what the Rebbe did was he went back to the beginning again, and there was a second cycle, again, of learning one chapter every year. So the second book of Basilagani has all the Maimarim from 1931 until 1948. Because after 1948, the Rebbe stopped saying Maimarim. That was after the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka was nostalgic. So you have these 3 books, Basilagani of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Then you have 2 Svarim called Basilagani, which are 40 Maimarim altogether, a little bit less, from 1951 until 1948. So what did we do? We continued, which means we continued to learn the next chapter, and that means in 1951 we started a new cycle, the third cycle. And now we're in the fourth cycle. And based on that, we're into chapter 16 of the Frierdiker Rebbe's original. Are you following me or you lost me? Yeah. In other words, in every cycle, it was 4 cycles. Now it's the 4th time around, we're doing chapter 16. That was when the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe explained this twice. Once in 66, and the other one was in 1986, these 2 years. So these are the Maimarim that everybody's learning today. They're learning the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimar, specifically chapter 16, because now we're the 16th chapter in the cycle. And then they're learning the Rebbe's Maimar that he explained it in 1966. And now they're also learning the Rebbe's Maimar when he explained it in 1986. So I figured if I want to do all these things, we'll be finished by next year. So we're going to learn a little bit of the Basilagani. We're going to learn a little bit of the chapter 16 of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And on Shvat itself, we'll be learning Basilagani, the original, and learning a little of the Rebbe's Maimar when he took on the leadership. But here I just want to finish a little bit more in this Maimar. Yeah.
Did the Rebbe only do this with Basilagani or also other Maimarim?
Only Basilagani, right? Yeah.
The one that is in this book, which one is this? Is that one that is in this?
That we're holding here? Neither.
No, there's a.
Oh, it has Basilagani in the beginning, yeah. This is the one that the Rebbe said the first year when he took on the leadership, 1951.
Is there a significance of learning that this year?
What?
Is there like a significance of learning this one this year, or
Everyone learns it every year because this is the first Bible that Rebbe said, yeah. Okay, so we're going back to the mashal. Again, the mashal was that there's a king. The king comes into a certain city, and in that city, there are people that say the king came with his ministers. There are those that say we choose this minister, those that say we choose another minister, and those that say we choose a third minister. There was Pikach Echad, one smart person, he said, no, I'm choosing the king. And the reason is because the king is permanent and everybody else is temporary. And that's what the Maimar is going into. Why was it considered so wise? It's simple. The king is greater than everybody else. So that I've explained this already on 2 levels, 3 levels. And now, the last thing that I've explained was that you didn't see that it's true, if they would receive their sustenance from Klippa, they would then have much more. Because Klippa comes from Makif, right? We learned that last week. Makif means in a place that's unlimited, doesn't measure, doesn't calculate, and therefore they would get much more. Kedusha, the hashpah is in a way that it has to be received internally, and whoever receives has to be able to be worthy to receive, which means this light is delivered to each place accordingly. So therefore, you would get more limited because you get only according to your level. So Yidden say that they're ready to forego on the abundance of hashpah because they want to have the right hashpah, they want to have from Kedusha, not from Klippa. And the others, they choose to get from Klippa because they know that way they're going to get much more hashpah. So now the Rebbe is going to explain that a little bit further. V'hine, page 212 on the bottom. Atam Shala Pikach, the reason why the one who is the smart one, as in the mashal, chooses the king over the ministers, it says, because they all mischalfen, they're all subject to be changed. But the king doesn't get changed. He's permanent. We just finished explaining that the reason why the others choose to get chayes from klipa is because it's more. It comes in abundance. How does that fit into the reason that's given in the Medrash? That has to do with permanent, not permanent. And the Rebbe said it's connected. The chayav shelavar kavana bazeh, shashpo haba melu'um hazeh, hashpo that comes from the umazeh, that comes from klipa, ima yes beribu yesim hashpo me'kedusha, even though the hashpa that comes from kedusha is so much less and it's more limited, and the hashpa that klipa gets is in abundance. But the reason why Yidden don't go for it is because it's something temporary. It doesn't really last. Which is after the avoid of elevating the sparks is completed. Once the godly spark that's in klipa is extracted, that's a klipa. Klipa in itself has no vitality. Its vitality comes because Kedusha is hidden in it. Once the time comes that the light of Kedusha will be extracted from the Klippa, then it'll all fall apart. Page 214, Yizbat Megamri. It'll completely fall apart. How much more so in a Gaili Yisrael, a Yid who chooses not to receive Chayes from Kedusha, but rather from Klippa, שגם עכשיו זה שישראל לקבל חייס מעלום הזה הוא רק לפרישו, that a Yid, even now, the fact that he can get chayes from klipa, but it won't last, because ultimately it's not meant for him to get chayes from klipa, and that's something external, so it won't last. So in other words, this explanation could be understood together with the previous explanation. The previous explanation was that the nations want abundance, so they go to klipa. We want kedusha, so we forego on the fact that it's less. But the Medrash gives a different reason. It says that the king, which is kedusha, is permanent and klipa is temporary. So the Rebbe says, but we could put both reasons together. Because klipa is temporary, therefore you don't go for it, even though it's a lot. So in other words, you have a choice. You either had something which is a lot, but it won't last, or to have less, but you'll have it forever. So an intelligent person would choose less that'll be forever than a lot that's going to be discontinued. So that's the reason why the two things come together. The Rebbe will soon explain why it's not a good enough reason. But on the surface, it looks like this can be the explanation. Now, the same would apply to the other thing. That in Kedusha, whatever we get is limited. It's less. The Rebbe is going to explain even that is only now, but in the future, what we get will be much more in abundance than anything that the rest of the world has now. Page 215. The fact that the sustenance comes from Kedusha, it's limited. Urak Achshav is only now. But in the future, once Mashiach comes, where the root of Pnimis will be revealed, Sharshaim of Pnimis HaMakiv. Explain this a little bit. But let's just say the words and I'll soon go back to explain. So when the root of Kedusha is in this Gala, then that'll be even more than Klipa. Remember, we spoke in the beginning, everyone asked the question, so if we're saying that others get chayes from Makif and we get from Pnimis, that means you're saying everybody else gets chayes from a higher place than us. How can that be understood? So the answer is that when Mashiach comes, we'll see that what we get, which is Pnimius, Hashem's inner light, the source of it is from the inner dimension of Makif.
Source of our source.
Yeah. Remember I used general terms, and I said that the source of things that are lower come from higher, and things that are higher come from lower, but the source of the source is actually higher. Meaning to say, things that are not Kedusha get their chayes from Makif. Things that are Kedusha get their chayes from Pnim, which is the limited light. But the source of the limited light is deeper than Makif that the rest of the world gets. Where does that come from? The Pnimius of the Makif. And therefore, the fact that we get things now in a measured way is because the ultimate source is not revealed. When the ultimate source will be revealed that we also get from Makif, but from the inner dimension of the Makif, then what we will be getting will also be in abundance, much more the abundance we see now in other places. Let's read a few more lines. The source is from the inner dimension of the Makif. The Hashpah Kedusha will also be in a tremendous abundance, even more than the abundance that others get from Chitzonis of Makif. Again, remember the Makif is the infinite light, but other get their chayes from the external part of the infinite light. And we get our chayes from the internal part of the infinite light. So therefore, what we will be getting will also be much, much greater, not just in quality, but also in quantity. And let's just turn the page. K'maimer Azal, this is alluded to in Gemara. In this is the famous story with Rabbi Akiva. There's a few stories that are similar, that Rabbi Akiva and the sages were traveling together, and they saw something which was very painful because it showed how we're in Golas, and the other sages began to cry. But Rabbi Akiva began to smile. And they asked him, why you're smiling? And he asked them, why you're crying? And they told him they're crying because for example, they went to the place where the Beis Hamikdash stood, and they saw the spot where the Kodesh HaKadoshim was, and they saw foxes running back and forth. So they began to cry. They said, this place, which is the holiest place in the world, where the Shekhinah rested in a way that no other place in the world, and yet what's now, it's like a wasteland, and there are foxes running around there. It's such a disgrace. So why are you smiling? Anyway, so he explained to them that the fact that there are foxes there only reinforces that soon we'll see the fulfillment of the other prophecies, how there'll be Geula. Basically, he saw in everything the Geula aspect of it, and they saw more the Golas part of it. So one of those stories was they were traveling to Rome. And as they weren't in Rome yet, they were, who knows how far, but they were getting closer to the city. When you get closer to the city, they heard the noise of the city. It's a big city, a lot going on, and they heard that noise. So they began to cry, and they said, look, such wicked people, such evil people. They killed and buried so many Jews. They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and look at what they're enjoying. Like apparently it's a place that's alive and well. So Rabbi Akiva said these words. Why are you smiling? They asked him. So he said, if people who transgress Hashem's will are having so much, so those who fulfill Hashem's will have so much more and much greater. In other words, not only is the advantage of Kedusha that it's something which is permanent and something which is full of content, and that's empty and it's temporary, but even in terms of the quantity, ultimately the quantity that will come from Kedusha will be infinitely greater than this huge quantity that came from Klippa. Why? Because Kedusha comes from a higher place in the realm of Makif. How confusing is it? I usually give out a piece of paper and make a little chart, but I didn't do it this time. Just do it on the board, make it a little bit more visual. Let me try. I can't hear from you if you did get it or didn't get it, so I'm assuming you didn't get it. Okay. If anyone wants to protest, let me know. Very simple, I'll put it on the board. So basically, there's the makif. This is makif. Makif. The word makif really means infinite, right? In the and then there's pnimi. Pnimi is the whole Seder Shtalshus. Chochma, Bina, Das, the spheres, the world. That's pnimi. So this is, we'll say, the Seder. I'll make it simple. Let me just put down pnimi. Pnimius. Me. Okay. And this is finite, because this is the four worlds, the 10 spheres, and all the details. The whole infrastructure of creation is the pnimi, and it's limited. And everything gets according to its size. So everything is limited. So when he said Kedusha, anything in Kedusha gets its chayes from here. See that from Klippa gets its chayes from here. So the reason why we see in the realm of Klippa such abundance is because they're getting it from Makif. And that's infinite. Why can't they get from Pnimi? Because they're not a vessel for the Pnimi. So the only way they can be sustained is from a Makif, a light that shines everywhere equally, right? So what we're saying is when Mashiach comes, there'll be something higher revealed. This is called the Pnimius of Makif. The Pnimius of Makif. And that's really the source for this. So Kedusha is getting from here, but the source of this is from here. When that's going to be revealed, which means a higher realm in the realm of Makif, then the abundance that Kedusha will have will be infinitely greater than this abundance that they're getting. Still not.
You good?
This half of the room says yes, this half of the room still. Okay. We'll still chew it over more. So the Rebbe says this explanation is not a good explanation, not good enough to explain that that's what the Medrash means when it says that the pikach, the smart one, chooses the king. Why not? This explanation is not sufficient. Based on this, that means gam b'chirasa shel hapikach b'hamelech, the fact that the smart person chooses the king is really no different than everybody else. It's because of the sustenance that he's going to receive. That's really the motivation. The only difference between the smart person and the people that choose the ministers, is they're looking at things the way it is now. Right now, if they go to Klippa, they're going to get in abundance. And we are smarter. We're able to see, look at the future, look at the outcome. How's it going to be later? Aderech Maimorim Zal, like the famous quote from our sages, who is wise? One who sees what will be the outcome. In other words, in general, the difference between a wise person and a foolish person is that a foolish person judges things as they are now, and as a wise person judges things what they'll be like in the future. So therefore, there are many things that right now it looks like this is easier, this is better, this is more fun, this is more money, but that's temporary. When you look in the future, you see the benefits are the things that in the future and on the long run will really be benefits. That's in general. So the Rebbe is saying the same thing here. It basically means that both the SWAT person and the other people are really looking out for their benefit. That's really their motivation. That's the real agenda. The only thing is they think, let's go for what's a lot now. And the clever person says, I'm going to go for what's going to be a lot in the future on permanent. But from the Maimer, it appears to be that no, the Yidden, when they choose Hashem, is not because they'll get more benefit from Hashem, but because that's the emes, and they want emes, even if they don't have the same benefits. If we say the reason why they want it is because they want to get abundance, that means they're also looking out for the benefit. There's no difference. The only thing is these people go by the benefits we're getting now, and these people go by the benefits that we're going to get in the future. The fact that it says in the Medrash, the reason why you didn't choose Hashem is because you didn't say Hashem is my portion. They're not saying because they want to get more or they want to get benefits that are going to be permanent. They're saying they're choosing because Hashem is my portion. Muchach, this indicates the fact that the Pikach chooses the king, it's not because of the benefit that will derive, because he wants the connection to the king. That the connection to the king is more important to him than all the benefits that he can get. That means the fact that you didn't choose Hashem, even though at present the abundance of sustenance is more by those who go against Hashem's will, it's not because what Rav Akiva said, it's not because they know that in the future those who follow Hashem's will have even more. That's true, but that's not what's motivating them. But what's motivating them is the hashpah that comes to those that follow Hashem's will. They get the hashpah from the inner desire of Hashem, from what Hashem really wants. But the hashpah that comes to those that violate Hashem's will is commanded shadabas. That's like a person who throws it over their shoulder, against his will. In other words, this is what you have learned in Tanya. Right in the beginning of Tanya explains that Klippa gets the chayis from Hashem, and Kedusha gets chayis from Hashem. So what's the difference? Klippa gets from Hashem's external desire, and Kedusha gets Hashem's internal desire. What's the difference? He gives the mushals like a person who gives something to someone, but he really doesn't want to. He does it reluctantly. So how does he give it to him? He just throws it behind his back, or you can't face him. Okay, here, take it. Can't even look him in the face. You can't look him in the eyes. That's how Hashem gives chayas to Klippa. The Kedusha, he gives it willingly. So somebody would say, I don't care if he looks at me, he doesn't look at me. If he's giving me $100, I'm happy to take it. What's the difference? So the answer is, if it's given from Hashem, from his pnimius, then it's godly, it's emes. And if it's given from a place where Hashem doesn't really want to give it, he's not really investing himself in that place, so it's not godly. So if I'm thinking about the materialistic gains, you're right. As long as I get a lot, who cares? But if I'm thinking about emes, I'm thinking about content, and if I'm thinking about real value, then I want what's connected to Hashem, not something that's not connected to Hashem. So therefore, according to this, you didn't want what Hashem is giving them, and they're ready to forego the abundance, is not because they know there's going to be even more in store for them in the future, but because they want pnimius from Hashem. That's what they want. That's the real reason. But the problem is, that's not what it says in the Medrash. In the Medrash it says that this is permanent and this is temporary. It gives the other reason. So now the Rebbe is going to show how the two reasons go together. Page 219. And the fact that the Medrash gives the other reason and says that the reason why they choose the king is because the king is permanent, and all the ministers, whatever they offer is temporary. It doesn't mean they want it because it's permanent. The from the fact that it's temporary, that is the indication that even at present it's not really emes. It's not really godly. And in fact, it has no true substance. And that's why ultimately it'll fall apart. The fact that Klippa has the ability to transmit life and vitality to Bali Chayim, to all the animals in the world, to all the other nations in the world. It's not because Klippa itself really has any power, but it's because Klippa gets from Gedusha. And therefore, it means Klippa in itself has no real chayas, no real life. So when it says that this is permanent, this is temporary, that's not what they want. They want Hashem because that's the emes and that's the pnimis. The fact that it's not permanent is the indication that it's not really godly, it's not really connected to Hashem, and therefore it's not emes. Therefore it's discontinued. But there's a question you could ask. So what is the difference, let's say, between something that's not kosher, it's treif? So the godly light is not really in it. It's sort of it's something which is it's getting chayes from klipa, and Hashem is doing it behind his back. And what are we saying? That's not emes because ultimately it doesn't really last. And when it comes to kedusha, let's say you have a Sefer Torah, it doesn't have an existence in its own right. It's because Hashem gives it chayes, therefore it can exist. That's also the same thing. Tefillin, mezuzah, all the things which are kedusha also only exist because Hashem is sustaining it. Without Hashem sustaining it, the Beis Hamikdash exists because Hashem is sustaining it. If you wouldn't sustain it, it wouldn't exist. So how is this different than everything else in the world that needs Hashem's sort of support to sustain it? So the answer to that is in the next piece, which hopefully we'll do tomorrow. Maybe we still have to chew this over again. Maybe tomorrow, after 24 hours, we'll review it again and it'll register. That's what I'm hoping.
Rabbi Majeski?
Yeah.
The source of Makiv is Mimius Makiv also?
No.
What's the source of that?
The source of Makif, that's where it begins. Pnimis Makif is this. Pnimis Makif is the source of the Pnimi. And Makif means that it's something which is external.
Oh. So it's the
In
external.
other words, it doesn't really have, Makif itself doesn't have the Pnimius. The Pnimius doesn't manifest in the Makif.
So they're completely separate things?
It's not completely separate, but because everything, it goes gradually from a higher level to the lower level. But it means that the Pnimius of Makif, that manifests in the Pnimi, and the Makif itself, that remains Makif.
So Makif is the result of not being Panini.
What?
The Makif is like the outer,
Right.
right? So it's just the result of not being Panini. So there's no
real substance to it. The Pnimius is even on the highest of levels, the Pnimius is the real substance, and the Makif means something which is external. We'll try to chew it over again tomorrow. That's a good question. Okay, to be continued.
Thank you.
Are you Alona? Alone?
Yeah.
Alona? Yeah, welcome.
It goes from inside outside or from up down
It goes from inside the makif,
and out.
then it goes into the Erpinimis.